Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scuzz, West Scousebow.
That's right, according to the Wall Street Journal. For anyone who saw the Wall Street Journal piece, it actually is Scuzz who was quoted in that piece, not Eric West, who I think we should make sure he does not show up on our pod this year. But you know, I'm sure he's a good guy.
He is him. I am him. I don't know. We did get it corrected, which was nice to see. But there's still a couple of small details that have gone awry. But it was nice to talk to Lane Higgins, who wrote that article, and share some of our perspective on how awesome the home opener was for the Miami of Ohio game, but then also I got to talk a bit about why we thought it was such a special stadium and a special opportunity for NU fans. So yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, big shout out to the Wall Street Journal. Check out that piece if you haven't already.
I mean, Scousebow, West, Eric with a C, Eric with a K. We just beat the brakes off Maryland, baby. That's all water over the bridge.
Exactly.
Let's go.
Before we get into that, just want to follow up again. We mentioned the Abbott Big Ten Conference, the We Give Blood Drive. We mentioned that last week. Had a few more details on the Northwestern aspect of that. Northwestern is hosting an on-campus blood drive on Wednesday, October 23rd from 1 to 7 p.m. in the Ryan Fieldhouse. So if you haven't had a chance to donate blood and help Northwestern try to get closer to that $1 million prize to advance student and community health and get a free 1-month subscription to Big Ten Plus, enter for a chance to win tickets to the Big Ten Championship game in Indy, go ahead. It's there. Just go to big10.org, find the Northwestern link on that, and head over to Ryan Fieldhouse on October 23rd. That's a week from this upcoming Wednesday, if you're listening to us at the time of recording. But yeah, it's really cool. We talked about it last week. Such a great cause, such a needed cause, especially now. It's like you got the hurricanes that ravaged the East Coast, the Southeast Coast, and people who need blood badly. We've got just this massive blood shortage in this country, and fewer people under the age of 25 are donating blood. So
Sammy, I was thinking about when we were talking through last week, and one of the things that they cite in the article, the press release from the Big Ten, is they talk about the important needs for blood, and obviously trauma and emergencies like you just described is a huge one. Maternal care, especially after pregnancy, after birth, etc., and then cancer care. These are two critical other treatment areas that where blood's really important. So I think it's helpful for people to hear that, to know like, wow, I really am making a difference in a ton of different ways and spaces. So encouraged, absolutely anybody who's able and willing to go out and do that, do it, and join the competition. Let's get those Northwestern numbers up there.
Speaking of getting Northwestern numbers up there,
yeah, I didn't even.
That's a beautiful segue, my friend. You didn't even mean for that, but I love it. Northwestern 37, Maryland 10.
How about them points?
That was just, what a great feeling it was to wake up on Saturday and just be like, you know what, we're cool. We had our game. We should just sit back, relax, watch the carnage, watch the great games happening, and just like we had ours.
I sent you guys a picture Friday afternoon of myself in full Northwestern regalia, sitting in the Notre Dame bookstore with my kids, while my wife shopped for a new jersey, and I don't know, it felt kind of karmic by the end of the night that they had come out and played. I mean, not just a win, but such a statement win, and to see Carmine and what it meant for him to be back on the field for the team, and then of course his incredible play to get the strip sack, and to see the offense, to see Jack Lausch continue to take another step forward, to see the defense rebound after that tough Indiana game and really shut down some high flying wide receivers at Maryland. Like, it was this game was like all the notes all the notes.
Oh, 100%. It just, all the feels too. This one just felt so good, so cathartic, right? I mean, like, this has been a team that, again, we're only a few weeks removed from just this absolutely anemic offensive performance against Washington where literally nothing worked. And I think for all of us, too, who've just been like, look at the way that Lausch is working, right? Look at how he's trying to get this. Look at how things are going south in the Washington game, because he won't abandon the system, because he's so trying so hard to get better at what he knows he's supposed to be getting better at, and then to watch it bear fruit over the subsequent weeks. And just a scant couple of weeks later, this dude, 13-yard touchdown run, his pocket awareness is amazing, he's extending plays, and he's dropping bombs to Kurtz and Henning. And it's just like, you're watching the Who's Your Huddle podcast, who we submitted stuff to them prior to the Indiana week. I mean, they messaged us in the middle of the game being like, I think you guys have one in Jack Lausch. And that's what we're all thinking during the game. And keep in mind, like, the Who's Your Huddle, they saw him. They saw what he was capable of, and then they watched him build on that against Maryland, and they're like, hey, I think you guys have a guy here. And, like, it's just so great because we all feel that way too. And I think if you use Lausch as one, I think one of the things that made me feel so good about that one, about this game, and the specific character of this game, is there are so many guys who definitely had the best games of their Northwestern career in this game, right? I mean, you could quibble and say that it's not Lausch, but I mean, like, again, like, Lausch only attempted 18 passes in this game, but again, the dude was dropping bombs out of the sky in this game. Like
10 of 18 for 203. I mean, we were getting some great chunk plays going.
It was just,
well, it's not just great chunk plays, because we've seen chunk plays in the past. I'll tell you what I have never ever seen in the past is Northwestern complete 3 40-plus yard passes behind the defensive backs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just like, you know, there was a very similar bomb to Kurtz in this game, the 55-yarder, where he was behind the defensive backs. Now, like, he had to, you know, jump to catch it, et cetera. They caught him, they tackled him, et cetera. It wasn't a runaway for a touchdown, but that belies the effectiveness of the scheme, drawing guys in on the run. Not like an RPO necessarily, but the way the scheme is being executed, the way they're running play action. You typically don't have a run pass option that goes for a 50-yard bomb, so I don't think it was an RPO. But John, you highlighted how they used Hyman as a decoy and sucked the defense in to open up that deep pass for Kurtz against IU, and they did it again against Maryland, and then 2 others. I mean, the over the shoulder throw to Henning. Or I'm sorry, the over the shoulder throw to Kurtz, which the 40-yarder, right, was absolute perfection. And then you had 2 40-yard, like almost a mirror image of that over the shoulder one to Henning that just went through his arms. So it's really like 4 passes where Northwestern had a receiver 40+ yards downfield open, and the quarterback got the ball to him. There are so many things that have stymied this in the past, whether it's poor protection schemes, just like running 4 verticals that like not Hankowitz, but Jake used to do, and just leaving the quarterback on an island on a 7-step drop to get killed. 50-50 balls, guys having trouble getting separation. Like these are the same players that Northwestern had on the field last year. We've seen Kurtz in years before. Like, the talent has always been there, and we're seeing this scheme and the coaching start to layer in and start to set these guys up for success, put them in position to be successful. Of course, Lausch has got to make the throw. Kurtz, Henning, they've got to make the catch. The O-line have got to make the blocks. The running back's got to pick up the blitz or make the right move into the flat, like whatever. All that execution stuff has to happen still, but this, like, I have never seen that before as a Northwestern fan. Even in the greatest years of Northwestern offenses, when it was Simeon, it was the back shoulder throw. Thorson, would fire those ropes. A lot of back shoulders. That was a hallmark of McCall. You just didn't see these kind of moonshots downfield and receivers coming up with them at the other end. It's just not something we've witnessed regularly.
Well, and it's when too, because I think of the last bomb to Kurtz was a situation where at that point Carmine had just made his unbelievable play, and then Maryland got the ball back on the subsequent possession and then punted, and we had or the other they drove down. I'm trying to remember what happened, but then we had gotten the ball back, and at that point it was into right, like there were maybe like 10 minutes left in the game. Northwestern had run 6 offensive plays in the entire half. And
they turn it over on downs at our 20.
Right. So we take it over on our 20. At this point, this is the 7th play we've run all half, and Lujan's like, go get him, deep ball. And just super aggressive play, knowing that he had it. That's the first part. And then the second part is, you can use, here's a guy, like we're talking about all these guys who had the best games of their career in this game, and I can't wait to go through all of them. Here's a low-key example of this one that maybe a lot of people, Ben Rather. Ben Rather was awesome.
Yeah, he played amazing.
And you can look at the opening bomb to Henning, and we talked a little bit about this on Twitter, but I mean, it deserves to be shouted from the mountaintops. First of all, Northwestern's given up 6 sacks on the season, okay? Sack a game. Like we are absolutely elite on pass blocking right now. 5th in the conference. And the difference at this point last year, we'd given up 22 sacks. And right now it's 6. So that's just crazy. But you can watch and basically like you look at that Washington game when we were like, Lausch is just holding the ball. He's trying to see it. He's trying to see it. He's trying to see it. Now it's basically like he doesn't throw bad passes. He doesn't throw bad passes into traffic. He just doesn't make just errant passes like that. And his pocket awareness is really good. And he's gotten way better just in a couple of weeks. But you can look at that first bomb to Henning and watch the way Rather blocks that play. Because this is the other thing. Like, we're throwing bombs here. Bombs take time.
Yep.
And you watch that play, and Rather's man, the defensive end, immediately dives to the inside. So effectively, like the original pocket is just like gone because that guy just dives hard to the inside. And Rather just redirects him, handles the block, totally takes care of it. Lausch never even looks. He just maneuvers around the situation. His eyes are downfield the whole time. He just buys himself a little time and then unloads it. And it's just like, it just looks smooth. And you're like, man, they're blocking. The pass blocking, the run blocking, we know. Like, there are issues. But the pass blocking has been good, and Lausch fits with these guys. So that's the other thing. Like, I mean, look at Rather, but I mean, like, you've got this core group. I'd say, like, the elder statesmen of this group, the guys with the most starts, right? Caleb Tiernan, Josh Thompson. And then Rather, who was always miscast at center, and now is out at right tackle where he belongs. And when it comes to pass protection, like those guys are getting it done, and it enables us to unload downfield like this.
Got to talk defense too. I mean,
well, hold on.
I want to get into the nitty gritties. I want to come back to it, but sort of just a general sense of like the defense. We can come back to sort of individual aspects, but just want to give them their flowers before we dive in.
The crocodiles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Them crocs came to play.
Yeah. Scuzz, you put up the gif of the crocodile, and that was just perfect. Crocodile eating turtle soup.
They got 3 sacks. Indiana sacked Edwards 5 times, but it felt like more. It felt like we were just harassing him.
The defense had 9 tackles for loss. Maryland averaged 1.8 yards a carry. I mean, dominance. This is a defense there is an absolutely elite wing of the Big Ten in run defenses right now. We're right in the middle of that wing. But the Crocodiles it was dominance. We talked before the game, and it's Scuzz, I think we were talking after the game where you were like, this is part of the way this went down is just how validating it was based on our read of what this Maryland team was going to be. And it's like 100% because Maryland has a quarterback with a gun for an arm, and a couple of elite wide receivers, and a very dangerous running back in Hemby, and an O-line that just doesn't have it. They don't have their stuff together. And we absolutely that was the difference at that position was a huge thing in this game. Like the defensive line was just dominant. And yeah, we can bounce back to the wideouts, but before we do, worth mentioning, and we mentioned it a little off the top, Carmine Bastone's huge play. And I mean, as a Northwestern fan, to say that one didn't check absolutely every box, right? It's not just that you have a team captain making the play of his career at a huge moment in a Big Ten game to create, a sack, a strip, and 7 points. It's Carmine Bastone. This is like one of the most beloved guys on the team, and he's been hurt almost the entire season, and he comes back, and we talked about it. We were like, this will be an X factor because the guys will get up just because he's out there, and then for him to make a play like that, just incredible. And as an aside,
well, in that statement though, that the guys got like 100%, and not that I didn't think he was getting an impact, but I felt like, God, our D-line runs so deep. Like one more guy, I don't think it's going to make a massive difference. But I felt like you saw the defensive line at another level this week. I thought they were dominating the Maryland offensive line.
Oh yeah,
and there was some time, like as the game went on, and you got later in the game, it wasn't quite as once you're deep into the fourth quarter. And maybe they were more playing contained, just kind of making sure they didn't, lose their lanes, etc. But God, like holding Hemby to 42 yards on 14 carries, and some of that, of course, at halftime, this game was 17-7. At the end of the third quarter, this game was 17-7. This is not a game where Maryland needed to abandon the run and throw the ball like crazy to try and catch back up, like the final score would potentially indicate. Roman Hemby only had 14 carries and only gained 42 yards. This is like the primary weapon on Maryland's team. It's just a hell of performance. And I think what made that possible, Theron Johnson played his his pants off.
It was incredible.
For me, front of the list. 100%.
They showed over and over and over again him just completely shutting down Ty Felton.
Incredible.
It was exceptional. It was exceptional, the play. And you think about, I diagrammed a couple of things like late in that Indiana game. Theron Johnson was on point. In the past, he generally was on point most of the time. And Indiana was just better. They just were. But wowza, did he play phenomenal. Just taking away one of half the field on one of Edwards' primary favorite targets. A guy who had 14 receptions against Villanova, 11 against Michigan State, 9 against Virginia.
It's the Big Ten's leader in yards after catch.
Yeah, like completely took him out of the game. He still gained 77 yards, but it's reminiscent of the Corey Davis, Matt Harris matchup from all those years ago that we watched when Northwestern played Western Michigan. Just in like a guy that clearly was a strong performer for the other team. I guess the difference here is I was thinking Prather was the bigger weapon, and we held Prather we held Prather like reasonably in check as well. But I like that our secondary played on relatively on an island. I felt like Northwestern brought more than 4 a lot.
Yeah, they had the tough assignment. We talk about the Crocodiles had this unbelievable game. The Crocodiles also enjoyed a big mismatch. Our defensive line is just way better than Maryland's offensive line. That just is what it is. That was obvious all game long in both phases. But Maryland's got 2 awesome wide receivers. And, we talked about that, right? We talked about Prather. We probably didn't talk about Felton enough. But Maryland had the ability to be like Maryland came out and they were basically like, whichever one of these guys Theron Johnson's covering, we know that's your number one corner. We still think our guy's better. We're going to go after you a ton. And then they looked on the other side at Josh Fussell, who played pretty much this entire game at the number 2 corner spot. And they're like, that guy's a freshman and he's had really rough patches of the season and we're just going to attack him all the time. Theron was unbelievable. Like Scott said, game of his career. No doubt about it. I mean, 3 passes defensed, a tackle for loss. And if you just watched it, if you watched what he was doing out there, the degree of difficulty was so high with what he was dealing with, and he was handling it. And then Fussell, I mean, like, Fussell's game was good enough. And I think the big point on this is, look at Theron. This is what happens when guys get quality reps and they grow and develop. Because Theron wasn't always like this. And now look at him now. Like, what a friggin' game. And you look at Josh Fussell, and you have Braun talking after the game, being like, Josh Fussell's going to be a great cornerback in this league. And we're like, hell yeah. Because I'm looking at his development, and like, it's going to be the same as Theron's. This is a game that, like, that's a freshman playing an entire game against 2 elite wide receivers and doing enough, getting enough done, and taking major, meaningful steps. I'm just like, all these guys, and we haven't even talked about Damon Walters, who had a fumble recovery and interception in this game, playing safety in some of his like first reps. It's just, the secondary they needed a game like this, and it's huge for them. And all those guys, best games of their career, right? Carmine, biggest play of his career. You could argue Hubbard's had more sacks in a game before, but you could still argue this was the biggest game of his career. And there's no doubt it was Mac Uline's biggest game of his career. 11 solo tackles, and then they had him playing Tampa too. Like, that was the other thing. Like, Mac Uline,
that was sweet.
Yeah, Mac Uline was manning, the linebacker core, and they're sending him deep, covering wide receivers. There were a couple of times where I was like, "Whoa, Nelly, we are really making Mac do everything." But he got it done.
There was the one play where he broke up like a seam pass to the tight end. It was the tight end going into the end zone, and Mac ran with him the whole way. They went back and showed the replay, and it reminds. There was a play I diagrammed last week against Indiana when I was going through like kind of the defensive sequence at the end of, a tackle was made at the sideline to break up a pass, and it was Uline. He reminds me of Nate Hall in terms of his effectiveness and coverage right now, and we'll see if that translates to some of the big type plays that Hall used to make. But to have the versatility in a linebacker, it's interesting because usually it would be the outside linebacker that is doing a little bit more of that, but with Xander being such an absolute like perfect attack, the running game attack the offensive line type player, or not the offensive line, but attack the front side of the play, if you will. Uline on the back end, they're kind of a perfect tag team right now.
Yeah, the defense, it was all dialed in, and again, it's not always going to be perfect, and you are going to run into offensive machines like Indiana where everything is working. But Maryland was a team where, again, we think they've got a couple of great football players and they're inconsistent as a team. And we totally won in the trenches, and the secondary stepped up and did just enough. I want to give a shout out to, I don't even know. I know Uline was in on it. I know Fitzgerald was in on it. A couple of the defensive linemen. Everyone who combined for that safety. That was so a safety.
Oh God!
I can't even.
We're going here now. Okay.
I don't want to cry over spilt milk. That's one of the worst calls I've ever seen.
Ridiculous.
It was such bullshit. It's such bullshit.
Like, both parts of it. In the moment, if you watch that play at full speed, they spotted that ball at the half-yard line.
It's preposterous.
There's no way even a part of that ball gets over the white line. The entire ball has to get over.
Clear.
I don't know that any of it got to the line. It's not even close. And then on the replay to be like, well, we don't have a clear view. A clear view, like a 5-year-old child can look and be like, he doesn't come close to getting that ball out of the end zone.
The problem is the ball. The balls. I'm not defending.
You couldn't actually see
like,
the ball, and
that's why they called it the way they did. Which is again, it's like I totally agree. It's horseshit. And how the Big Ten Network doesn't have a reverse angle that we can all see to, if nothing else, make us feel, slightly better about it. But it's just is a bananas situation. And then of course, on the next play they get a 20-yard gain and then go on there. Their
18 play ate up like over half of the third quarter.
Yes.
I mean, that was
which is classic. That is classic when like this is a classic football thing when there's a huge momentum play like that gets taken away. It is very hard to bring yourself back up to that level of play. Because you're frustrated, you're disappointed, etc. But obviously they got over it eventually. But it was such a nonsense situation in the first place. You just think about what that would have done for the imbalance that was on display in this game. If that call had gone correctly, and now you're talking about another 2 points and Northwestern with the ball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
But that being said, though, I mean, there is something to. Yes, they drove 99 yards. They did not drive 100 yards. We kept we had that goal line stand. We held them to 3, and then from there, like the offense just kind of started clicking. Obviously, the fumble, the Carmine's play, forcing the fumble, getting the touchdown there. But from there, it was just off to the races.
Well, real quick on that, it was. Let's see if we have the tackler. Because it was first and goal at the 1, and Hemby gets tackled for a 3-yard loss. And I can't remember if it was Pate or I don't think it was Carmine.
Was it Soares?
It might have been Soares. I like that play was, if not for the Bastogne play, that play was the biggest defensive play of the game. And then Edwards gets erased on third down or on second down, and then Hubbard gets him on third. It was an incredible sequence. And I guess it took that, a 99-yard bend, as you quipped, John, like Mike Hankwitz was smiling somewhere.
Yeah, the spirit of Mike Hankwitz.
I mean,
man,
that is the
epitome
the spirit of Mike Hankwitz. Yeah.
He's still alive. But he's smiling somewhere, right?
I'm saying the spirit in his heart,
there you go,
very much beating heart. I mean, your point stands though. It was an incredible bend, and this is a game where Maryland scored 1 touchdown in this game, and on the play that they scored a touchdown, they gained about 2 inches. It was by no means a glorious touchdown that's going to live in the annals of Maryland. Like, they got stuffed on 3rd and inches and then maybe got 1 more inch on 4th and inches and got into the end zone. I wanted to circle back, Scuzz, to a place that I think you wanted to go way back.
Yeah, let's head back to the offensive side. Go for it.
When we were talking offense, and I think, look, there's a guy on this offense who is a captain of this team, but he's not a flashy guy. And he's a guy who talks in low tones and speaks few words and is just not a rah-rah, super emotional guy. And that's Bryce Kurtz. But the fact of the matter is that guy is an unreal wide receiver. I mean, I think back to this summer when I was cutting the highlight package together, and it's just Kurtz highlight after Kurtz highlight and being like, oh my gosh, this guy had a monster year last year. And then we talked about it at the end of the Washington game. That last pass that skips to Kurtz towards the end of the game, and Kurtz just has a look on his face it's not frustration, it's just like resignation, being like, all right, I'm the senior leader on this team. My quarterback, he just didn't have it today. And, we're going to have to pick this thing up and move forward as a wide receiver. It's not where I want it to be right now, but, on we go, right? And then you have in the post game, Lausch, after an 8 for 27 performance, being like, I have to do a better job of getting Bryce involved. I've got to find Bryce. Since then, Bryce has 250 receiving yards in 2 games. He's been electric.
Yeah, he's on pace to beat his stats from last year. He's putting up a full additional 1.5 yards per catch. And I think they're just getting started. And we said going into last week, it was clearly obvious in the Indiana game that they had prioritized targeting him, and that, you know, they had probably been over focused on AJ Henning before the break. And look, Henning's still getting plenty of balls and getting and finding a lot more space out there with Kurtz performing. But I just think it's very interesting to me how the offense is orchestrating together, because the running game has not emerged. The running game really struggled in this game, and at the, you know, minus the initial touchdown run that Lausch had.
Lausch's.
Yeah, Lausch's initial touchdown run, and he had a couple other runs early on that almost kind of set the tone. But then I think Maryland must have just decided, look, we can't let them run on us, and we'll dare them to pass, and we did.
Yeah, I think Maryland. You can look at Hyman, right? I mean, Hyman's numbers is like in this game, 5 carries for -5 yards with a long of 3. But we've talked about this with Hyman, right? I mean, I think, right, like you're looking to find a way to utilize him more in the run game. But I guarantee you he was a focal point of Maryland's game plan all week long.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is Maryland's a team that doesn't have a particularly great secondary, who's being like, Kurtz, Henning, Hyman, I don't know how we cover all these guys. It's just too many. They're basically being like, that's too many playmakers. I don't know how we're going to prevent the big plays. And then they didn't. And like Hyman, like, again, he'll have quiet games like this, but you're also going to have games where he's absolutely off the charts. And, you know, that could come as soon as next week. I just realized this is really funny. We have talked about all of these players, and somehow we probably haven't talked about the guy who had the best game of everybody.
Yeah, I didn't mention him off the top either.
we just don't usually get to specials until a little while in. But there's no doubt, you know, who the number one guy was in this game. Luke Akers was absolutely out of his mind.
Which is wild because, like, I know, John, you and I clocked Olsen kind of limping off the field at the end of the Indiana game after a kick. But to find out, you know, earlier on Friday that, you know, he was out and Akers was going to be handling everything is like, okay. But, I mean, you know, you think of Luke's dad, right? I mean, he knows how to kick field goals. I'm not concerned that Luke Akers doesn't know how to kick field goals. It's just one guy doing punting and kicking are two just very, very different, different motions, different, mindsets. I mean, it's just very different. So, to kind of be able to do both is just huge. And he looked great. I mean, the kicks were down the middle. He was punting like his, like he was, oh my God.
That's the thing. If it would have just been the kicks, that would have been good enough. But
yeah, they said on the broadcast that, quote, he's Northwestern's long distance kicker, which I was like, really?
Yeah, like, I heard that, and it's like, okay.
Because I don't think Olsen's ever been a long range guy, high accuracy.
Yeah, and that's fine. That maybe, like, if you needed a 56-yarder to win a game, that okay, sure, we'll try it out Luke Akers. I mean, like, can you imagine all of us in that moment of like, wait, what is happening? But then those were like three of the most chill, no drama field goal kicks of like my fandom as a Northwestern fan. And that's no shade to the milkman. Like, Luke Akers just came out and was like, sweet, we got this.
Yeah.
Boom.
And it's like, as a Northwestern fan, the first one, it's that classic, classic Northwestern fan getting inside your own head being like, we never step on throats. We never do. And been like, that first field goal, you're like, this is the one that makes it a 3-possession game. So here we go. And he just drills it. And you're like,
right down the middle.
Right. Yep.
Right down the middle.
And again, it's like, if it would have been just that, but he was touchback city on kickoffs, and he averaged 50 yards a punt and dropped at least one inside the 5. Yeah. It was a perfect special teams day. One guy can't do more than that from a kicking position. I'm sure he's going to be the Big Ten special teams player.
He was.
Yeah. I mean, in absolutely incredible game. And it has the benefit of being like, we started the day super nervous, being like, oh man, like Olsen's out. And we ended the day being like, wow, we have two great kickers. There's been many years we didn't have one. Now we have two. Suddenly our cup runneth over with kicking excellence. So that's just another fantastic thing to have.
Well, it's just like depth is one of the hardest things to come by in football, and it's what separates, frankly, the top 10 caliber programs from the number 11 through number 40. The depth on the depth on Alabama, on Georgia, on Ohio State, it goes for days, and every team is going to get injured at some point. And when teams make a miracle run, a lot of times it's because they have some injury luck. Not always, but a lot of times it happens. And we're in a position where we've had quite a few injuries in the first half of the year, and we've seen the depth step up. And it hasn't always been perfect, but I mean this was an example where it was, and it's such a critical thing for this team to be able to weather those situations, which certainly there are examples in the past that have gone, totally sideways when we have an injury or an issue.
Winning the turnover game 4-0 is huge. Like, turn them over 4 times and not turn it over at all.
On that note, too, like dovetailing with special teams, and we talked about this on Twitter, too, like this is something we've been tracking. You can go all the way back to the Penn State game of last season when when Braden Bruss forced a fumble on Nick Singleton on the opening kickoff of the game. And if you put that as the starting point, I think it's been 14, 15 games since that point, and Northwestern's averaging 0.65, either blocked kicks, defensive special teams turnovers, or special teams touchdowns a game. And it's like, we kind of tracked it right after the Duke game. And then since then, Najee Story blocked a field goal in the EIU game, and then Grayson Metz got the strip in this game on that kick return. So it's like the special teams continue to deal with that. But yeah, they played turnover-free football, and Lausch has been a big part of that. We got a little lucky on the opening kickoff return where, that we didn't turn that one over.
Yeah.
The other thing we should say, too, this remains a thorn in Northwestern's paw. The penalties were a problem.
Penalties and
especially
third down conversions. Only 3 of 12 on third down. And that kind of led to the disparity in number of plays run, time of possession. I mean, like
right.
we couldn't stay on the field. We couldn't convert first downs, and they were 6 of 15. So I mean, they were
right.
extending drives. And obviously the one that you think of off the top, the massive 18 play 99-yard drive just ate up the entire third quarter. But like, we got to be able to extend drives, right? You got to let the defense get a chance to rest, and especially because like we had so many big plays, which is awesome. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't have big plays. Absolutely, like big plays are phenomenal. Love it. It changes the whole momentum of the game, but it does kind of take away some of that rest that your defense needs between drives. So I mean, that is something that we need to be able to do moving forward, especially with these next couple games coming up. We got to be able to convert third downs. We got to be able to extend drives. Yep,
it's an awesome game. Still places to improve, right? Better execution on third down, and the sloppiness on the penalties is just, that's been our bugaboo. But again, it's like this was an awesome game, and for so many guys, their best game ever. And it's an awesome thing to build on. And it was so awesome for us too, for all of us, to just be like, you see when this team does what they know they can do and everyone executes, this is exactly how it should be, right? It's like Maryland has a couple of great players, and that didn't matter because we came out and did what we know we can do and got a big win. And it's just super validating. It's super validating as fans, and it's got to be super validating for the guys, and they'll be able to use it going forward.
I want to play a quick little game here before we move on. This is a game called Reevaluate the Season So Far. We're halfway through the season, and kind of going into the season, what we thought of our opponents, and I want to like kind of go through game by game and see how do we feel about it now, right? Like how do we feel about that Miami Ohio game now, winning that game 13-6?
Now we look and we're like, we should have scored way more points. We know that Miami of Ohio is just not what we thought they were going to be. I mean, at the time, there were things that worked out well, and at the time, we all thought Miami of Ohio was going to be better. But again, it's like I don't feel like this team hit its offensive potential remotely until this game. So I'm glad for the win, but we could have done better.
Yeah, and even if you factor in the touchdown that we should have had when it was for goal to go and we fumbled.
And the Duke game, like looking back on that now.
That's the one. I mean, that's the one that's going to sting forever. I mean, like that's a win. We easily could be 4-2 right now.
But considering they're 5-1 right now, like
they are.
But we should have. There were 3, 5, 7 times we should have won that game, and that's where it's the execution and the sloppiness is frustrating because, we were good enough to beat that good team. And yeah, they were better than we expected. We thought their defense would be, would leave much to be desired this season, and it came to play. Manny Diaz had, made an imprint on that team by week 2. And yet we had them dead to rights and couldn't take advantage. And that happens. I mean, how many times in other crazy ass games the last 2 weekends have you seen somebody not be able to score from a goal to go situation? Which I might add, Northwestern again was perfect against Maryland. I think we had 2 opportunities. I'm kind of checking that right now, but Duke. I feel like Duke. They weren't exactly we are who they thought that they are who we thought they were, because they were probably better than anticipated, better than expected. But we still should have had them.
Yeah, I think too, and I should say too, like this is no shade at all to Mike Wright, who like it should be pointed out, like after the Maryland game, like if you look at like Braun's post game speech, Wright is like right in the middle of the locker room for that speech. Like this is a guy who's still like very much like a team leader and very much in on everything, even though he had to hand over the quarterback job. But I think it's quite possible that that in the long run, this will be viewed as like the period of time where there's the pivot to where Northwestern tried to do something that Northwestern hasn't done since 2018, which is develop a quarterback, right? And that I think in the long run, the long scheme of things, this will be the point where like the Jack Lausch era began, and that's which certainly was not without its own set of hiccups, but that might help in the long term lessen the sting of that Duke game, which in another sense, that's going to be one that we're going to wish we had.
Eastern Illinois, fine. I mean, we don't need to go back over that one, but going the Washington game, how do we feel about that now, knowing how difficult it has been to go cross country, how difficult it has been to go those 2 time zones?
Washington came to Iowa and got absolutely smoked.
That's a great point.
Like I have 2 thoughts about that Washington game, because we thought coming into the year they were gettable, and I'm going to tell you if they were playing in our house, I think that game goes very differently. I think we probably still lose, but we don't look as bad doing it if that wasn't Lausch's second start. Like if Lausch started the season and had a Miami game, which we probably still win, a Duke game, which we probably still lose, and an EIU game, which we win under his belt, that maybe we lose 24-14, 24-13, 24-17. Like, we probably still lose that game, but I don't think we look nearly as anemic on offense. But just seeing how things have played out this season,
right?
Going to Washington and winning with a relatively young QB and a fair amount of questions around the team seems like an extremely daunting task.
I feel like it's even like years from now, people are going to look back at this first season of the new Big Ten and be like, no one had any conception of how to cross multiple time zones and win when this conference expanded.
I think it's really important to note, like, teams have been crossing multiple time zones and playing football games for decades.
Yeah.
Doing it week after week after week is the part that I think is wild. And when we diagram some of the Pac-12 teams coming over their schedules, I don't think USC left the Pacific time zone last year.
Yeah.
It seemed like, or UCLA, like maybe they went to Mountain Time once and that was it. So this is just like, and it does harken back. You remember the Stanford game, body clocks and all that crap from 2015, right? It's been a joke that has permeated a lot of spaces since then. And there's plenty of teams that cross time zones and do just fine. But the pattern this year is undeniable.
Yeah. Again, I'm like, if you could tell me we could play Washington 5 games from now on the lake at Northwestern, yeah, I would very much expect us to be right in that game. And it's not just because of that piece of it too. It's because I think, like, you can even look and be like, Denzel Boston torched us in that game, and he's been awesome all season long. But, like, Josh Fussell, it's like Jack Lausch isn't remotely the same player he was when we played Washington. Josh Fussell isn't remotely the same player he was when we played Washington. There are guys on this team who are really young who are improving by leaps and bounds right now.
Indiana, I think, we talked about them just last week. We don't need to go back over that.
Props to Indiana. Yeah. I think we lose to them again. They're an awesome football team. Great. They're so good.
And
they're playing home against Nebraska this weekend, and I think they are going to surprise some folks by beating the Cornhuskers. And I think that's going to wake everybody up to what IU is for the first time.
I also should remind people need to be aware right now too of the fact that Curtis Rourke's 6'5", 225 pounds, and has been awesome at 2 different levels of NCAA football. This is not someone people are going to be trying to talk themselves out of when the NFL draft comes around. This is someone whose profile is just going to keep rising and rising.
And obviously we covered the Maryland game. Anything else we need to talk about for this game before we look ahead to the Badgers?
Well, I think Maryland was, like in your reevaluation piece. I guess one other thing I'd say from a reevaluation standpoint on Maryland on Indiana is they're better than we thought they would be. We thought they had some interesting pieces and that they could be dangerous / exciting, and they are much, much more than that. But
they're very dangerous and very exciting.
Maryland feels exactly who we. I mean, I think I said that Loxley would be the first coach fired, and that's where we're headed.
This is
it's a race between him and Walters now.
Well, you've also set us up for an excellent pivot here, because you're right. Maryland is exactly who we thought they would be, and then the question becomes: then is Wisconsin the same thing?
Yeah.
So Badgers coming in on Saturday morning, 11 o'clock kickoff, and
Badger.
They're coming off 2 big wins against Purdue and against Rutgers. But how do we see this team coming in? I mean, ESPN sees them as a 6.5 point favorite, or Vegas sees them as a 6.5 point favorite. ESPN's analytics has them as a 70% win on the matchup predictor. I mean, obviously we don't put any faith into that whatsoever, but we've kind of smirked at Wisconsin from afar, but now that they're coming to our house for the last game on the lake, what are we looking at here?
We have a couple different perspectives on this. I'm gonna let John. I'm gonna let you cook first.
So they're, I don't know that they're different per se, right? Because I think we both agree on what we think Wisconsin's best at. Okay, one thing everyone needs to know is Purdue. And I, let me knock as I say this, because Purdue scored a lot of points against Illinois, which tells you more about Illinois than Purdue, frankly. But Purdue is a historically bad football team this year, and I mean on both sides of the ball.
I don't know. Their new quarterback situation might change that a little bit.
They're better since they switched their quarterback. Part of that's Illinois being I'm not going to go down an Illinois rabbit hole here. Just
save that for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. The defensively, this is an all-time bad defensive football team, Purdue. Okay, all time. And I'm saying, like, we were here for the Kevin Wilson Indiana years, and I'm telling you, Purdue's giving up. You think Wisconsin scoring 52 points against Purdue? Purdue's giving up 39 points a game. Okay, Purdue's giving up a 40 spot every game. Wisconsin was only 13 points better from just what everyone's doing to Purdue in a given stretch. Okay, so that's not to hate on Wisconsin's offense. It's just to say Purdue is that bad. They are, let's put it this way, if Purdue is giving up 32 more rush yards a game than they are right now, Purdue would be giving up 3 times as many rush yards a game as Northwestern is. That's how bad Purdue's defense is. So when you look at Wisconsin's performance in that game, you have to take it with a grain of salt based on just what Purdue's defense is. And Rutgers is, frankly, I'm as shocked as anybody because Rutgers, we had big, kind of big thoughts about. Rutgers is falling off a cliff right now.
Well,
if Rutgers,
not only do we have big thoughts about them, but they held their own the first
right
5 weeks of the season, and then,
it's just like the wheels are. It's shot. Like if Rutgers has 4 wins right now. If Rutgers keeps playing like this, they're going to finish the season 4-8. Like they can't throw the ball right now. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, his average game over the past, basically over Big Ten play, he's going 13 for 31 for 135 yards and a pick. That's his average game in Big Ten play. They can't throw. He can't hit a target, and the receivers drop half the passes he does get to them. I was watching the Wisconsin-Rutgers game just in shock, being like, what? Like, Rutgers had dudes open. They just couldn't hit them, and they couldn't catch the ball. And it was like, at halftime, I turned it off. I was like, Rutgers isn't going to score any points in this game. That offense doesn't work. And Rutgers also, at the same time, has the second worst run defense in the Big Ten. Rutgers' run defense is horrible. They're twice as bad as us. The only reason they're not the worst is because Purdue's such a statistical outlier.
It's interesting because like we thought a lot about Rutgers coming in this year based on how they performed last year, right? They brought back their strength on defense, bringing back pieces on offense with Monagai, decent O-line, the Kaliak-Manis and Kirk Chiraka connection on the QBOC front, and we're looking at their schedule like, oh yeah, they can totally beat Virginia Tech. They get Washington at home. At Nebraska's tough, but then they get Wisconsin at home, et cetera, et cetera. I even said last week, like, I'd be stunned if Wisconsin won this game, and I'm kind of stunned. But you do go back and look under the covers. They got blistered on the ground by Virginia Tech too.
Yeah,
and it does paint a picture where, wow, this matchup with Wisconsin was quite bad. In large part, and this is where like my year and a half long rant on Wisconsin, it seems like the Wisconsin coaches have started to figure out where this team's bread is buttered.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's the thing, because I like, in terms of like the finish on my perspective, is you got to understand Purdue. The wheels fell off the wagon, and then the wagon was covered in gasoline and lit on fire. Like, that's the level Purdue's been at basically this year. Rutgers, the wheels are just falling off the wagon, kind of to everyone's shock. But know that those, by a good degree, are the 2 worst run defenses in the Big Ten. The next worst run defense after them is USC, who basically bottled up the Wisconsin ground game.
Yeah.
And
so
this
is really important because, like, classic what happens when you see this sort of thing, like, oh, those are the bottom 3 run defenses. Oh, well, it's because they had to play Wisconsin. No. USC did not allow Wisconsin to run wild at all. Tawee Walker, the running back who has emerged after Ches Malusi was injured and lost for the season, 12 carries, 55 yards against USC. Wisconsin could not run the ball against USC. They barely eclipsed 100 yards. It was some turnovers and lucky plays that allowed them to make some hay in the first half of that game, and then they couldn't thereafter. Now that's, of course that was a weird West Coast multiple time zone thing. So we got a lot of variables flying around here, but it's important that like USC's run defense is not the bottom of the barrel because they played Wisconsin. Quite the opposite.
Right. But with that said, right, the fact remains, and this is what I know, guys were like, Wisconsin statistically obliterated Rutgers and Purdue on the ground. They piled up rush yards in these games. Walker went off. Against Rutgers, he had 200 yards, three touchdowns, 8.3 a carry. Like, they just absolutely went off in these
he only
games.
He only had 94 against Purdue, but in total they rushed for 228, averaged 5.5.
Yeah.
And they're like,
and this is where their bread is buttered. I mean, like, Braden Locke has been, and you talked about this, Scotch, like, he's been much more efficient this year as a passer than he was in his action last year. He's also, like, only thrown more than 30 passes in a game once, and that was against Purdue when everything was working for them. He threw 31. You just watch Billy Edwards throw 51 passes for Maryland. Like, that's not what Wisconsin wants to do. They want to pound the ball. That's what they want to do. They got a good offensive line, a good running offensive line.
But if they're playing air raid,
yeah, I mean, but again, I think, and Scuzz, you've mapped this out. Like having to switch to Locke at this point, and like maybe their hand was
not
forced.
what they wanted.
Yeah, right. And I mean, maybe they were kind of forced into like a better approach here, a more traditional approach.
Well, 100% they are, and here's why: Locke's not a runner.
Right.
He's not a runner. Now he started 4 games last season, and he carried the ball a total of 17 times. This is what when Tanner Mordecai was, touching the ball 50 times a game. And he carried it a total of 17 times over 4 starts. And he's only carried it 5 times in these last, 3 games this year. I mean, like, the goal was Tyler Van Dyke to be the air raid not dual threat, because Van Dyke wasn't a dual threat guy, right? But to be the air raid QB, can still run on occasion. But Locke can't do that, and it has, I think, quite literally forced this coaching staff into a more optimal approach to the personnel and the system that they have. And I think that's what scares me a little bit. Is it seems that they've last year they kind of begrudgingly came around to, like, in the second half of games they would just run Braylon Allen over people, and it worked pretty well. And this year it seems like, and it is hard to discern, right? Is it these 2 opponents, or they really got their shit together? And I get, much like when we played Indiana, they have not faced a rush defense like ours. They have not seen
not even
like ours
not
outside
even
of Alabama.
Close. Yeah.
Alabama's the only thing, and this team is so different than the one that played Alabama, right? They started that game with Van Dyke. Ches Malusi was still around. They've been through the ringer. One of the favorite, the favorite things for college football fans is the backup's better than the starter. Well, it'd be pretty surprising if, the backup QB and the backup starting running back ended up being better than the starters for Wisconsin. But if it does force the coaches into a more optimal scheme and strategy, like, that is the one thing that worries me a little bit about this weekend's matchup. On the other side of the ball, our improving offense and what remains like just not a great Wisconsin defense is, I think, an underappreciated opportunity for Northwestern when other people are going to be looking at this game.
Well, it's great too, because you look at the line. The line is 6.5 points. And you might be looking at that and being like, it's 6.5 points because of everything Scuzz just said, and because Vegas is looking at these 2 games, and Vegas does not know how to calibrate what Wisconsin is based off of these 2 games on the back of the Alabama and USC game. That's part of it. The other part is the greatest tradition in Big Ten football. And let me get at it this way. If you're at all worried about Tawi Walker as a running back for Wisconsin, well, let's put it this way. It could be worse. Let's take out Tawi Walker. I'll give Wisconsin Corey Clement instead. You know what? No. Let's give Wisconsin John Clay instead. Put the big bowling ball out there. You know what? No. Give them Michael Bennett instead. Give them that elite athlete, Michael Bennett. You know what? No. Melvin Gordon. Take Melvin Gordon. You can have Melvin Gordon the third for this. You know what? No. Jonathan Taylor. Why don't you take Jonathan? You know what? Screw it. Take Ron Dane for this game. Why don't you guys put Ron Dane at running back? You know what else you can do? Flip the coin, baby. Because every one of those running backs lost to Northwestern. Because since 1985, Wisconsin's favored every year, and they lose half of those football games. And don't think Vegas isn't thinking about it. They're looking at these lines and being like, I don't know, man. Like, I guess they're favored again. They lose 1 out of every 2 games against Northwestern in which they're favored. So it's like you're looking at and being like, this team's going to break that curse? This group of guys, Braden Locke, he's the magical solution to this? I don't know, man. I just don't know. It's not all accident. We're built year in and year out to play this team. And not the team that Wisconsin's been like messing with. This guys has so thoroughly mapped out. We're built to beat Wisconsin doing what they love to do traditionally, which is what they're going to try to do in this game. It's at our core. Xander Mueller, the Crocodiles, like those guys are built in a lab to play this team. And just keep that in mind. Like whatever you think about Wisconsin's performance over the past, better versions of this team have lost to Northwestern many times. And it's my favorite tradition in Big Ten football.
You said that so well. I have nothing to add. That's perfect.
Yeah. I'm literally, you go down the memory. I'm just so happy for all of you. You all just remembered the John Clay fumble. You remembered the Ron Dane fumble. You remembered, it's just like, it's so amazing.
Jonathan Taylor, like weirdly had 4 bad games against Northwestern.
Yeah.
Or maybe 3.
Yeah.
He would always underperform his stats. And there was a year where he didn't play. He was injured. But yeah, you're spot on, man.
Yeah. And look, Melvin Gordon ran for like 1 billion yards against us. I don't know what to tell you. They still lost. Like, this is what happens to Wisconsin when they play Northwestern.
Real quick, again, before we move off, what are we expecting crowd-wise?
Well, what are we expecting? I mean, like, should we project this? I'm expecting you all to show up. That's what I'm expecting. Like, we've talked about this plenty, right? And I mean, we should say, like, behind the scenes right now, we're in the middle of doing what we do every week, right? Which is figure out exactly how to take every one of our tickets from our personal allotment and our extended allotment and find homes for all of them, right? Like, this is something we've been doing every week.
Purple homes,
exactly. And branching out and connecting people who saying, like, I mean, again, like, we've been doing this for the last couple of days. People coming to us, hey, I've got a ticket, or like, I'm looking to sell this ticket, but I want to make sure it finds a purple home, or like, hey, I've got a ticket that I'm looking to find a home. They're like, this is what we do, right? You need help, we'll help you, or you can find someone else in the Northwestern community that'll help you. But, get to this stadium, and if not, make sure that another Purple fan does.
This is the last game of the season at Martin Stadium.
Yep. And you know what? It's going to be like 71
day.
I know, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful.
I mean, like, we're going to have threaded the needle on the weather for this in just an unbelievable.
Like,
yeah.
All you wait till November wankers. You got your late night Duke game in a monsoon, but beyond that, it's been picture perfect.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, we haven't been able to break out the gorgeous hockey jerseys. I might wear it anyway. I know. I literally might wear it anyway.
I know the hockey jerseys are looking Wrigley season is looking like hockey jersey season right now. But yeah, no, I mean, but again, like circling to what Sam said, come to the game. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, get out. Like, all of you who are like, well, the team just played out of their minds for you. Like, they just couldn't have been any better against Maryland. Yep. Went out to the Atlantic and beat the crap out of a team. So, like, you don't have that excuse anymore. It's like, it's about pride. It's about showing up and repping out for this team, and really, and repping out for your Northwestern family too. Coming to with an eye that all the other core Northwestern fans around the stadium are going to be looking and being like, I showed up. Where's the rest of the Purple Army? The students are going to be packed. Guarantee that.
Don't let those Badgers come in.
Yep.
We don't like they're yeah. Don't let it happen.
We don't need no stinking Badgers.
Anybody, if you can't make the game, shout. We will help you.
Yep.
We will help. We'll do our best to help broadcast your opportunity. If you just go back to the ticket office and give them back your tickets and let them they're going to just sell them on StubHub. Mm-hmm. This is what we've heard through the grapevine. I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but like, act as if that's true. Act as if that's true, so we ensure that we get as many Purple fans in this stadium as possible.
Right, and again, we know N1 and N2 directly to our right, where we're sitting in N3. That's going to be all red. Like, those are tickets that are made available to Wisconsin. That's their allotment. That's where they're going to be. Let's have it only be there. Let's have them look to the left and see a purple wall, and let's have them look to the south end zone and see a purple wall too. And then let's go out and beat the hell out of this team.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. Let's take a look around the rest of the conference, rest of the country. Where shall we start?
Any other notable multi-time zone jump Big Ten football games this weekend? I'm trying to remember. I want to say, Scuzz, if we can talk about the Oregon-Ohio State game, Scuzz alerted me to it. That game in because I was not able to watch the first half. That included one of the greatest football plays I've ever seen in my life.
Which is a play that you've been calling for about 12 years,
yep.
Which is on an onside kick. Just drill the ball at the up back because he won't be expecting it. Even if he is, it's going to be really hard to catch it.
And then it bounces back toward you.
It bounces back towards you, and it's a live ball. It's like the best possible way to try to get an onside kick. And Oregon executed it perfectly. They missed the extra point on their opening touchdown, and then went for 2 on their second touchdown and screwed it up. Just a horrible play call. And there was a
12-man penalty.
Yeah. Well, but before that, there was a personal foul on Ohio State. So Oregon scores their second touchdown. There's a personal foul on Ohio State. Enforced on the kickoff. I thought you could choose whether you enforce it on the point after or on the kickoff. Maybe I'm incorrect about this. But they took the point after from the regular spot and went for 2 and didn't get it, which seems pretty stupid. So either I'm wrong about the rule or Oregon made a giant brain fart, but then followed it up with the greatest onside kick you've ever seen in your bloody life and recovered it. It was amazing.
Yeah, and it worked perfectly too because they kicked it at the guy and he was just kind of like, and like jumped and it just bounced off of him.
But if you didn't watch this game was bananas. I mean, the final score is 32-31, but it feels like it should have been like 62-61 because my whole family, we all went up to Notre Dame with my wife's family, and we had a great time. But we were watching this game, and the after you've spent 12 hours outside tailgating and cheering and everything else, I'm eating my third piece of lasagna.
That's sort of haze, right?
In a haze, watching these two teams throw haymakers. But just like every time you looked up at the television, it was a giant play. Just one after another after another. This was a wild game. We thought it was the game of the year back in July when we talked about these teams. We said this was probably what was going to decide the conference one way or another, and my goodness, it did not.
I haven't seen anything to disprove that theory.
And it might just the next time these teams meet, it might decide the conference, and the third time they might meet, it might decide a playoff game. Like these guys,
or a national championship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, should we talk about the the time management at the end,
Well,
or kind of how that
well,
last drive, because that was just so fascinating.
There's one last thing I want to say that's kind of like a nice precursor to that is that I think we all felt like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all three of us were like, yeah, Oregon's got, like, we think they're going to have a slight edge when these guys play in October. And a big piece of that calculus was Dylan Gabriel, a guy that has been in the hottest of spotlight moments several times in his career at Oklahoma, has been in big games, etc. Against, Will Howard, a guy coming from Kansas State. Not that he's never played in a big game, but
not quite at that
had
magnitude.
never had played in anything close to this magnitude. And just for my money, didn't look like much of an upgrade on Kyle McCord. And to his credit, he played incredible in this game. And then in the most important moments, didn't. And that, I felt like that's what it came down to.
So that last drive, right? Oregon takes the lead, and Ohio State has a little bit of time left to run down.
Like a minute 40.
I mean,
Oregon,
plenty of time.
Oregon, 3D chess on that. They call a timeout, and I didn't even put it together, but they called a timeout and then intentionally sent 12 men onto the field after the timeout.
How do we know it's intentional?
I think the way that guy ran on at the very end.
Yeah, but I think the idea being bring on one extra guy, try to prevent a long play. You're going to get a 5-yard penalty, but the clock doesn't reset. So like Ohio State runs a play, they don't get anything. Then they whistle.
They're like on the outskirts of field goal range. 5 yards is not going to make the difference between the field goal or not.
Right, and I think they spent something like 5-6 seconds. It went from 12 seconds down to like 5. And I think it was, or 6.
Yeah, went down to 6.
And that was it. I mean, and then that was it. Like, I mean, they dropped back.
Yeah.
And Rodgers, like, the moment he decided to run, I mean, all he could have really done
is
just
Howard.
I mean, yeah, right. Could have decided to chuck it at the end zone, but he just took off, and that was the end of the game. They were just out of time. It was an elite play. It feels like not unlike the fake slide, something that the NCAA is going to outlaw or find a way.
I think they're gonna change this. I mean, this used to be the sort of thing that you could commit offsides intentionally to. I
mean, you saw Belichick do something like this in
kill time or things. Yeah, but
and that got fixed quick.
But here's the thing: like the play before all that, Ohio State gets I think a first down. There's a penalty. There's a penalty called on a completed pass, and the clock doesn't stop on that because there's a completed pass. So it keeps going, and they wasted about 15 seconds, and you can see Will Howard realize it and start to be like, guys, come on, and the offensive line is like going through like their slow motion setup as if the clock isn't running. So even before that Oregon, 12-man, whether intentional or not, Ohio State, because I thought as that drive was starting to progress, I was like, man, Ohio State's going to get this done. They just need like another 20 yards. They're golden.
Yeah.
And then
that personal foul, the offensive pass interference. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it was. It was the pass interference. So the clock didn't stop, and they let 15 seconds run off, and then Will Howard just lost track of time on that very last play, and if he had dropped 5 yards sooner, they had one timeout. They probably could have called it time. I mean, it would have been a long field goal, so there's no guarantee. I think the other thing that's important to note in this game, as we're talking about some of this end sequence, is on the first drive, Oregon had an interception that was quite clear on video replay, but it didn't get reviewed.
They didn't even take a look at it.
They did not even take a look at it. Chip Kelly ripped off another play. Their offense went super quick. They had a wide receiver who got stupidly ejected from the game for spitting in a defensive back's face. I mentioned they missed their extra point in the first TD. They went for 2 on the second, didn't get it. They also missed a field goal. Oregon made a lot of bad unforced errors in this game and still was able to come out. And so, playing on a neutral field, I feel like these two teams are as equal as any teams in the country, and I can't wait to see it.
Will Indianapolis be that neutral? I mean,
probably not. I saw Oregon the year after they lost the national championship to Auburn. I saw them in Dallas against LSU, and it was like 80% LSU fans, and I felt like the Oregon fans that were there didn't know what hit them. But I also think that that was a long time ago. I think Oregon has gotten progressively more and more. We've experienced that in Indianapolis, right? But I don't like 60-40. I don't know. Like it's not going to be the opposite of Autzen. It's not going to be like playing in the shoe.
I want to, in interest in moving on to the next game, I still very much feel like these are the two teams that are going to play for the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
And part of that is because one of the other teams, even though they're a top 3 team in the country, still has Drew Aller as their quarterback. And I'm sorry, I know the dude threw for 391 yards against USC. He also threw 3 picks and a couple of bad throws. And it was enough, coupled with some atrocious clock management by USC.
Oh, the worst. The worst. It's pretty clear that I was listening to I think I was listening to the Solid Verbal. They were joking about how like late game James Franklin and his horrible clock management has been transferred to Lincoln Riley. But the dude got to midfield and intentionally ran the clock down for 30 seconds to like play for a 50-yard field goal or some shit, and then his QB throws a pick. Like it was, this was bonkers. This was banana sandwich. But I'd said I didn't think Drew Aller was good enough to win that game, and I still don't think he was good enough to win that game because USC lost it.
Me neither. I'm like, again, he threw for big yards, but if you watched that game, and they still have a long way to go. A lot of big pieces, but Their D is great. They have, guys like Abdul Carter. That guy's incredible. But I think you look at the ceiling of the two quarterbacks in the Ohio State-Oregon game, and it's like, sorry, like those guys, they're operating on another level.
You cannot beat Ohio State unless you can attack them downfield the way Oregon did. It's the only way.
Yeah,
and it's what Michigan was able to do with J.J. McCarthy the last couple seasons. It's what Oregon did. Like they are just too good to beat the way Penn State is going to be able to beat them.
Now, however, we did this week get 2 more 2-time zone victories. Penn State and Minnesota both went out to LA and came back with dubs. That's
true. The Minnesota, hey, props to them for squeaking one out. They're 4-3. Like
but
that was a win that they needed.
Out against UCLA.
This is twice now that UCLA has lost a home game against a 2+ time zone team. So I think they're out.
Yeah,
they're out of the equation. They don't count anymore.
They're the exception that proves the rule, right?
They did hold Darius Taylor to 1.9 yards.
That's saying something.
Yeah. Well, also, as long as
actually, holy balls, Minnesota had 234 yards, 234 total yards.
Yeah, they
won this game.
This is about UCLA.
Oh my lord!
Someone has to be the worst, and it's no.
Does UCLA play Purdue this year?
No,
do they play?
This is so. That's the thing. I should slap my mouth because they're okay. Here's the thing. In interest of transition, you have to know that at the halftime of the Purdue-Illinois game. At halftime of that game, Purdue, in basically every way, is one of the worst Big Ten teams of the past, certainly 35, 40 years. Like, they're historically, if you look at like a chart, any kind of graph chart, line chart of every team in college football right now, Purdue is this massive outlier. They're not even close to anybody, okay? And you have to know, at halftime of that game, they are in every way this statistical outlier. That team scored 40 second half points against Illinois. 40. And lost in overtime by 1 point. So on one hand, for sure, Illinois found some life with Brown at quarterback, who, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that who we played last year?
Ryan Brown. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So the dude is clearly capable. I mean, he's capable of uncorking big performances, and he sure as hell did against Illinois. Purdue also, like, they gashed Illinois on the ground. He had a big game. Brown had a big game running the ball. So did their running back. They just smoked Illinois on the ground in this game. And again, as we said, Illinois put up 50 points, 43 in regulation against Purdue. But remember, Purdue gives up 39 a game. So this was, if Illinois is still ranked, I'm like, somehow people decided Illinois deserved to be ranked after they lost to a Kansas team that, again, is awful. And they've just managed to hang on to that ranking by their fingernails week after week. And I don't know if they're still ranked after this Purdue game.
They are.
It's hilarious. And again, Purdue definitely found some life offensively in this game. And again, Brown did it to us last year. So it's like, we're going to have to buck up for that. But they remain.
I forgot that we played him last year.
Yeah.
I'd completely forgotten about that.
But they remain one of the worst defensive football teams I have ever seen. And Illinois almost lost to them. Altmaier continues. He's the bell cow. If you're looking for positives for Illinois, like Luke Altmaier is it, like for sure. And that's what saved them in this game. But they could not have scraped by more on this one.
Any other takeaways outside the conference from last week before we take a quick look at this week?
Well, we didn't hit Washington.
Oh, okay.
Iowa,
Sorry.
So Caleb Johnson's really good. That's my takeaway with Iowa. And also Washington got body clocked, like for sure. But I feel
Washington also. Washington ran for 127 yards. They averaged 4.2 yards per carry. They threw for 266. They outgained Illinois by about
Iowa.
Outgained Iowa by close to 50 yards. 2 turnovers to 1 turnover. But this is one of those, I'm just not exactly quite sure how Iowa did it. Penalties were even. Oh, I guess Iowa didn't actually turn the ball over, where Washington had 2 turnovers. But they had more first downs. They had almost 400 total yards Washington did. It just belies the point. Like, this Iowa defense is not. Jonah Coleman averaged 8.9 yards per rush. This Iowa defense is just not what it has been in the past.
For sure.
Caleb Johnson changes the game for who they could be.
Yep, 100%. Like, he's that good. Like, every defense, if you're like, well, yeah, but hasn't Iowa, haven't they been trying to do this? Yeah, they've been trying to do it for 3 years now, and it hasn't worked at all. And he is the difference. They still can't throw at all. And this dude is still getting it done. Yeah, he's really good. You can easily make an argument there's no better running back in the conference right now, because without him, they'd be nothing.
They scored 4 TDs in this game, and the first 3 were all Caleb Johnson. His second one was a receiving TD.
Yeah, so that certainly has me nervous for when we play them. But yeah, on the flip side, this is not the Iowa defense of the past 5 years.
So elsewhere around the country, any big takeaways?
I tuned in for LSU Ole Miss, which was bananas down the end. I did not tune in, but I was following Tennessee, Florida, which was
South
crazy.
Carolina, Alabama.
South Carolina, Alabama
was
ridiculous.
Nuts. Yeah.
Onside kick and everything.
I didn't stay up for it.
Man, Chris Giannini's LSU Tigers.
K-State, Colorado was nuts late. I didn't stay up for it, but
yep. And then you had number 1 Texas absolutely smoking Oklahoma, not close at all.
We were just talking about that too. Arch Manning back to the bench. We've been talking about this, but this will be the last year You'll never see a quarterback like Arch Manning sitting on the bench in the NIL era ever again.
Is Texas back?
You'll just.
Sorry, I got to pull as much juice out of that joke as possible. They're real good.
You just have all these alumni bases everywhere. Like Michigan doesn't have a quarterback right now, and Arch Manning is sitting on the bench at Texas. I mean, you put Arch Manning on Penn State, that's maybe a national championship team. I mean, and my point being, the money will not allow this to happen ever again. There are just too many booster clubs and alumni and NIL collectives that are like, this is ridiculous. And it's going to lead to a lot of guys who are not as good as Arch Manning getting a lot more money, but this is how the market works.
So stop me when you hear an offense that Texas has played.
Okay.
Colorado State, Michigan, UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma.
I don't know what Oklahoma is. Like, I have no idea.
Not an offense.
Yeah. So
they play Georgia this week at home. So I'm going to reserve my judgment on whether Texas is anything or not until they've played a real football team. Now, after they play Georgia, they go to Vanderbilt. Could Vanderbilt take two number one teams in the same year?
I was going to say get that SEC win in now against Georgia because Vanderbilt
they sure as shit have an offense, but then Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky before A&M at the end of the year. I mean, like this is a shit schedule for an SEC schedule.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll see.
So this weekend, running through pretty quick here. Friday night is definitely not must-see TV. Oregon at Purdue.
I will say, Brown.
I was thinking about going to this game like before the season started just to see Oregon. I was thinking about going to this game, and now I'm like, oh boy.
I think it's funny too because
watching it get body clocked.
What Purdue did in the second half of this game was enough to probably raise a lot of people's eyebrows in terms of. I think most of that was about Illinois' defense. I think this game is going to be a slaughter. I think Oregon is going to.
Well, I mean, did we not all say the same thing about Alabama visiting Vanderbilt after beating Georgia?
True.
So
true.
Now, is it Diego Pavia? Is that his name?
Yeah.
At Vanderbilt. I mean, that he is a far cry from anybody who is suiting up for Purdue this year.
But
no shade to anybody on Purdue. That is just a statement of awe for Diego Pavia.
Purdue at night, but top ranked team coming in. I mean,
it's hilarious with the line too.
It's happened before.
Oregon are 27.5-point favorites. And like, if you bet on this game, something's wrong with you. But I do think Oregon is going to absolutely plow Purdue. I'm just like, you're talking. This is an unreal offense, and Purdue has let some very mediocre offenses score a ridiculous amount of points this year.
Yeah.
Our game at Big Ten Network on at 11 a.m. Central. We talked about that. Nebraska at Indiana, 11 a.m. on Fox. Indiana 6.5-point home favorite.
Awesome.
I mean, look,
awesome.
we thought Nebraska would have a better defense this year. They do. We thought Dylan Raiola looked like he has a lot of potential. He does.
Indiana plays all the time like Nebraska plays some of the time. That's the difference.
Neither of their units are on par with Indiana, and I think Cignetti is just out for blood and out to prove a point at every possible opportunity. And coming off a bye, like they're gonna pull some shit this week that is not on tape. And if anything, our defense was probably a good, litmus test for them, especially being on the road. If this were at Nebraska, I'd feel pretty differently. But I just think this is going to be, I could not be more excited for the IU fans going forward.
Yeah.
I think Indiana too, they're 16th. There's no way there are 15 teams in the country that are better than Indiana. There just aren't. And I think that's still going to be motivation for them.
Woof. UCLA at Rutgers. 11 a.m.
Hey,
I mean,
here's Rutgers'
this is
chance to get right.
The cure for what ails you.
I mean, talk about body clock here. I mean, UCLA is going to be playing at what?
Yeah.
9 a.m. It's going to feel like 9 a.m. for them.
I was gonna say. I mean, first of all, like if you were watching that game, something's wrong with you because that game's going to be all kinds of wrong. But if you're Rutgers, this is exactly. This is the magic elixir that you need.
And they're only a 4-point favorite.
Just a reminder,
Rutgers is only a 4-point favorite here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a reminder, without a week off, UCLA has hosted Indiana in LA, traveled to Louisiana to play LSU, hosted Oregon in LA, traveled to State College to play Penn State, hosted Minnesota in LA, and now travels to New Jersey to play Rutgers.
It's so horrific. I mean, like
after week. That when we talk about the body clocks thing, when we talk about the 2.5 time zones, that's what we're talking about. It's the back and forth that is killer. It's not one trip that hurts you. It's the every other week. Like, that's insane.
Oh, it's absolutely ludicrous.
And this is not a well, at least for me, it's not a commentary on like, well, expansion or blah, blah, blah. Like that's not what I'm talking about. It's just like, man, they just did UCLA dirty.
But on the plus side, they all now have diamond status on United Airlines.
Yeah, no
that's
doubt.
true. Yeah, they got the points.
I will say I was like, it is weird seeing these teams in these Pac-12 teams in the Big Ten, but I gotta say during that Oregon OSU game, I was like, shit, this is fun.
Yeah.
Michigan at Illinois. Number 24 Michigan, number 22 Illinois. CBS 2:30 kick. Michigan a 3-point road favorite.
This is where we find out if John's point about the Illinois defense is on point.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say this: Allmaier is for sure the best quarterback in this game. Like, respect where respect is due. Like, that's not even up for argument, right?
Jack Tuttle not doing it for you?
Yeah, no. Michigan's defense is way better, and Michigan's running game is way better. And again, I don't like Michigan may plow Illinois on the ground. If that happens, don't be surprised when it does. But I'll be curious to see what Allmaier can do against the Michigan D.
Well, and that defense needed a week off because they were really banged up. Best corner, best linebacker, they were really banged up. And I do think it'll be really interesting to see who comes out at QB because Jack Tuttle played some of that Washington game, and it seemed like maybe that was where they were going to go here on. I got to think Orji is done and back to spot duty status as for his running ability, etc. And I don't know that Warren. I guess Tuttle had been injured early in the year, and that's partially why Warren was named starter at the beginning of the season. But I mean, when you talk about quarterback roulette, like Tuttle's not a long-term option. He's a fifth-year senior. So they're going to be back to the drawing board.
Next year, Michigan's going to have a new quarterback, and he's going to be making $5 to $10 million.
I don't know. Michigan doesn't pay.
I don't know that. I don't know that I buy it.
I mean, either that or you become known as the power who won't pay players.
I mean, they're already known as that.
I'll put it this.
I know.
Yeah, they're already known as that. And here's the thing. I'll put it this way: if Ohio State's $20 to $30 million expenditure this offseason does not net them a national championship, I don't think Michigan will bat an eye. Change one hair on their head. They're gonna be like, no, look, we won a national championship. We're not gonna. You can't buy it. F you, Ohio State. I think that's 100% what they're gonna do. If the Buckeyes win a national championship and smoke Michigan at the end of the season, I think that is the only thing I think that could turn the tide for them.
I'm whatever. Good luck with that, Michigan. I'm like, it's not our problem.
This is what people were telling Harbaugh and everybody up there for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
You've got USC traveling cross country to take on Maryland. Southern Cal a 7-point road favorite.
This one's wild to me because USC is only a 7-point favorite, and that is 100% due to the travel. I'm just like, do you see USC falling to 3-4 because they lost to a Maryland team we just smoked? I just don't see it happening. I just feel like this is one more train on the Mike Loxley's getting fired.
However,
one step closer.
However, if they do, how hot does Lincoln Riley's seat? I mean, is Lincoln Riley's seat getting a little uncomfortable here?
That's a good point.
It should be.
If you're playing first coach fired, right? This game is a huge bellwether for that. There's no doubt about that. One of these coaches is someone's seat's red hot after this. With that said, I think USC is rolling in this one, but you are correct.
And then 6:30 on NBC, you got Iowa at Michigan State. Iowa 6.5-point road favorite.
This would be interesting because Michigan State has had to face Oregon and Ohio State in their last two games. And I don't know, like the stats don't really bear this up, but by all accounts, like their run D is not terrible. Certainly a lot better than last year. And they've got, bodies on that D line. Like, could they cause some troubles for Iowa on the road? I think yes. I think they lose, but could they cause some troubles? I think yes.
Yeah, I think Iowa's defense has fallen off. It still is an Iowa defense, though. Michigan State doesn't protect the football.
Oh, yeah, and their offense is awful. So.
Right, and this is like, I think at the end of the day, it's like suddenly we're going to be like, well, here's Iowa again with a total inability to throw, and they're 5-2. Like that's what this feels like to me.
Looking around the country, I haven't really dug deep into the schedule.
I got one for you. Will Louisville be the next ACC team to get screwed by the ACC in favor of Miami?
That's a good...
Tune in on Saturday to find out.
I like it. I love a good conspiracy theory that's like the ACC with all of their problems. They so want... Like the Calgorithm can't carry them forever. They need like a team like Miami to be really good.
Unfortunately, the Calgorithm's only good for Sunday through Friday. But
I was gonna say, props to the Calgorithm for making it seem like Cal has a good football team this year, which they definitely don't.
1,000%. Perception is reality, right?
Duke's only a 3-point favorite against Florida State at home.
Florida State is they're if they had sat DJ earlier, they're only 1-5.
Only,
but I think you're going to find that team look a bit better down the stretch. Now they're going to lose to Miami, they're going to lose to Notre Dame, but they're probably going to beat North Carolina. I think they could beat Duke. They're going to beat Charleston Southern, and then against Florida, who knows? So. Was that 1, 2, 3, maybe 4? I mean, they could end up 5-7. It's not what they wanted, but there's just too much talent on that team for them to be anything more than a 3-point dog at Duke.
Bama, Tennessee, that'll be fun.
Yes, that will be fun. What do you guys think? Like, do you guys buy into the DeBoer, Bama, however many quarters this is now of questionable performance, etc.?
No. Not yet.
I don't know.
I mean,
yeah. I would say, I was gonna say not yet. I think they still have so much. I mean, Milroe, like, he's got to get it together. I mean, that guy is so trick or treat. I mean, we all remember there are games last season in the playoff where he carried them, right? I mean, there are times where he seems unstoppable, and then there are other times where it seems like he can't do anything right. And Alabama 100% could have lost that football game. So. And then, like little things in that game, like there was the classic Alabama came within a missed 2-point conversion of overtime. Or no, right? No. What happened? They recovered and then recovered the onside kick, but then the South Carolina imploded. But effectively a missed 2-point conversion of overtime after the classic play where all Alabama had to do was fall down and the game was over and the guy didn't fall down. And it's like those are classic like mismanagement situations. It's very hard to imagine a Nick Saban team doing something like that, which is there are those little things where like people are you're right. I mean, but
There's noise in the system right now.
Right. I'm sure Alabama fans will be totally rational and reasonable about this entire situation. I'm sure that, and the SEC known for such
absolutely.
Things.
Georgia, Texas. I mean, you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, that one's
Saturday night.
So the interesting thing about Tennessee, Alabama is that Tennessee as ballyhooed as they are, have not really played anyone. I mean, yeah, they beat Oklahoma on the road, which is not easy, but also not like that team's
Oklahoma's
just
not that great.
They destroyed what is like now looking like a pretty bad NC State team, and they lost on the road to Arkansas. So like, I don't know, that's pretty middle of the road. The difference is, Georgia has looked. I mean, they've had certainly some struggles this year, but they've had to play Alabama. They had to rebound against Auburn. They've played some tougher teams. Whether or not and destroying Clemson as much as we like to crap on Clemson looks quite solid this year. Yeah. And then Kentucky has backed up their performance against Georgia with some other their defense is really legit. Though they did lose to Vanderbilt this weekend. So I don't know. I think this is going to be. I think Texas probably prevails, especially because they're at home. But this is going to be a tough game.
Have we arrived at Field Hockey Corner now?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm so excited. I don't know if there's anything
before we
else,
hit that. I mean, like basketball is coming soon. I mean, they have had like
Hold on. I just saw a headline on ESPN. I haven't seen it, but Dan Lanning says Ducks purposely induced 12-man penalty late.
Oh,
there you go.
Interesting.
So there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, there will be a rule change.
Absolutely. For sure.
That rule's getting changed. Hoops. This is, by the way, everyone is wondering, like, I'm sure so many of you being like, you haven't mentioned all the stuff with hoops. It is so much. We could spend a whole other hour just talking about this hoops recruiting class. Don't worry, we're going to get to it. We're going to get to everything with hoops. But yeah, no, I mean, right, you're right. It's coming.
But yeah, on that note, let's go to Field Hockey Corner.
All right, so for the past couple of weeks, it's been the broken record of another weekend, another big pair of wins for Northwestern field hockey, and that streak finally came to an end. And the reason it came to an end is because field hockey only had one game on the schedule this weekend, so they couldn't get 2 wins. It's only all you just had to make do with a single top 10 win over Harvard. And first of all, I'm not going to spend another 10 minutes telling the story we've told on the pod multiple times about what went down in the trivia competition, the bar trivia competition at the first West Lot Pirates planning meeting. But suffice to say, when a team from Northwestern beats a team from Harvard, the West Lot Pirates have a soft spot in their hearts for that victory. So good job, ladies. Way to take down the Crimson. In terms of the goals, I feel like we're mentioning her name every week. Ashley Sessa had another just brilliant goal in this game. The difference, though, in this case, I would say this time that goal was outdone by Northwestern's game-winning goal, which was fired in by Northwestern's other Olympian, Maddie Zimmer, which was, we put it up on Twitter, top shelf where mama keeps the cookies. It was absolute top cheese. Long-range rocket into the top of the goal, like an absolute missile. It was awesome. Like, you can check it out on our Twitter feed. An elite rocket of a goal and a reminder that this team just has so much talent. So on they'll go next week, Friday, from talk about academic institutions, from Harvard to Stanford. Stanford's coming in on Friday at 3, and then UC Davis on Sunday. So another big weekend on the lake. We've got the Wisconsin game, but you've also got another pair of biggies for field hockey.
Anything else to mention before we get out of here tonight, guys?
Bright and early for the tailgate. We're going to be there. I'll be there. 7 a.m. Red Pirate flag's going to be flying high in the West Tech lot. So come and see us. I'll probably have some donuts. I don't know. Maybe some hot chocolate. We'll see. It's going to be very early morning tailgate this time, but apparently the weather's supposed to be great.
Should be a gorgeous day. So hope to see as many of you out there as possible. Like you said, it's the last game on the lake before operations move south to Wrigley Field. I saw some images of the goalposts being put into Wrigley Field, so they're getting that ready. Hopefully they will have filled the Grand Canyon. that we ran into last year against Iowa when the massive turf craters opened up right around the end zone. Yeah, not bitter about that at all. But yeah, pack this place in purple, guys. I mean, come on.
Yes, let's go. Come on.
Let's get
go.
out there. I hope to see as many of you there as possible. And again, if you can't make it and you want to make sure your ticket gets in the hands of a Northwestern fan, reach out to us. Hit us up on Twitter.
Westlaw Pirates at Gmail.
Westlaw Pirates.
Twitter,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, at Westlaw Pirates. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Like, we're everywhere. Hit us up. Let us know. We will make sure your tickets get in the hands of Northwestern fans. So, on that note,
well, we can't guarantee it.
We will do our best.
We will do our best.
We sure as hell won't let them. We sure as hell won't let them get in the hands of Wisconsin fans. I can guarantee you that.
So on that note, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Westlaw Pirates. You can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the West Tech lot flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. John Lacombe and Eric Scousby, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.